And welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show. Excited to have you in here joining us today. I know yesterday, big day yesterday, a little bit of a day of mourning for Ohio State Schlegs, but like with each passing day, you get a little clarity of purpose. You understand what happened. More things, kind of leak out of what transpired. We've got a huge show today, as always on Tuesdays. Bill Bender will join us, talk a little bit about what he saw with the Buckeyes, what he saw nationally, how these teams are all built, and it's wild because what the perception is of Ohio State nationally. Did it change at all? Are the goals still all there? Is there something that people saw? They thought, hey, this Ohio State team, they're not what we believed that they ultimately were. So I don't think that's going to be the case, but we'll hear what he has to say and then talk about some of those bigger games as well. Dan Lanning, his comments on potentially having that 12th player on the field and how that works and what his thought process was behind all of that. Which, like, after we've taken another step back, like we pulled back from the matrix just a little bit more, you start to see everything. Buckeyes will be back out there practicing today during their bye week, trying to get back after it, improve a little bit. As you see that, kind of what are your thoughts now? Has anything changed with you in like this moment of clarity of seeing what has transpired now over the last 72 hours?
No, here's the thing. I don't like what transpired, meaning I don't want Ohio State to lose. Bobby, you did a great job on Morning Juice in Columbus, Ohio, on 97.1 The Fan, because this is, to your point, I want you to elaborate on it. This is the fastball that remains in college football. People are fanatical, more so in college football, about a loss, though one singular loss doesn't necessarily take you out of the equation because of 12-team playoff. And we've seen it before, a one-loss Ohio State Buckeyes won a national championship in 2014. The biggest thing, too, and I go back to, is Jeremiah Smith, going to transfer to go to a more complete team? What in the Sam Dick was that, right? And then some of the other comments as well. Okay, guys, I wanted to go back. And somebody say, well, they are not an elite team. Well, what constitute elites right now for people? I would say Texas. They have the one win versus Michigan. We will find out this week versus Georgia at home in Austin how just elite they are. But let's go back to that Vandy or the Alabama-Georgia game. And that was, if I'm not mistaken, was that not 2 versus 4?
Mm-hmm.
Same type of scenario. Guys, in that game, Georgia and Alabama both would think that, man, these guys have elite defenses, right? Right, Bob? Would you say that, Bob?
They got elite talent, 5 stars everywhere.
Listen,
elite.
519, Bob, and 547 total yards on elite defenses. Guys, here's the deal. So why do I say that? Elite talent, both sides of the football, playmakers in space, big plays. We saw that in those games. Though Georgia had 4 turnovers in that, we're still talking 500 and something yards on offense for both teams. You take that, you go to the Vandy game, right? Like, they lost to Vandy. They gave up over 400 yards. And I'm just saying Alabama in general. People talk elite programs, defensive programs. Even the Penn State versus the SC game. Penn State, now we know about SC's defense, better, but not there. Penn State had 518 yards. They still gave up 400 yards. Like, guys, like the amount of yardage that's given up in college football, I think the game has changed a little bit to where we see that number and say, like, oh my gosh, like what is going on? That doesn't negate the fact that they had too many explosive plays. They had 5 passes over 30. They had 8 plays over 20. That's not acceptable. You have certain packages where they're only rushing 2 or 3. WTF, effective court. We got it. I understand. So you use this opportunity to press on the coaching staff because players only do what they're coached to do. That's a fact. They got to take better angles. They got to tackle in space better, right? But at the end of it, we still had an opportunity to win a football game with 1:11 going down there to kick a field goal. Take all the other stuff out. You have to own it. I like that Ryan Day said, It should never came to that one chance. They should have left no doubt. They had opportunities in the game to leave no doubt on both sides of the football, and they did. Now you got to learn from it, grow from it, and now you got Nebraska coming in 2 weeks, so be better.
Yeah, I love your passion, Schlegel. Everybody does. They can see you just slamming on.
And I apologize for the choppiness of yesterday because I was at an official visit with my son. So guess what? I apologize, but I don't. I would give you the double bird. I don't give two shits. But I'll tell you this. The passion's always there. Whether I'm in Findlay, Ohio, or I'm in Columbus, Ohio, Bally's big play, we bring in the juice.
All right. I love your passion. I love your camera shake as you pound the table. I mean, everybody can see how much you love it.
You guys, this is on a plyo box right here at the Armory. I got an upside down plyo box. It's 30 inches around. No, I'm just kidding. It's a square rectangle. This is what happens when I get to actually train like a freaking animal.
Yeah. Well, training like
I need to do like this more often. Guys, I got super bumpy at West Side today. And my buddy Tom Berry beat my ass. Like he did. I questioned myself, and I'm in there like, don't be like, honestly, don't be soft. I got to get more where I'm in that level, kind of like to your beer chugging challenge, but doing it with deadlifting. That would make me contemplate that because the Juarez Valley 8 while drinking garage beer, that would be bumpy. 405 for 36 reps while chugging beer in between. Woo.
It's like you get hard by doing hard things, like challenging yourself. It's not the physical element of it.
Right now, boom, boom. You talking hard like Brett Favre in New York, or are you just talking? What are you talking about?
Well, Brett Favre in New York. I mean, that's a different type of hard that we're working about. Him and Sturger. I mean, I wish I would be able to do that. I mean, I lifted today, Schlegel. I felt pretty good. I did some chain bench and things. I just wish my body
dynamic effort. I like it, man.
Yeah, I just wish my body didn't hurt. Like that's the main thing. Is like, hey, I used to enjoy certain lifts. Now I don't really get to enjoy many of them at all because there's just an element of a joint or a muscle or whatever it might be. Like I've had this forearm deal on my left forearm and I've got some needles in it. I've had some different things. Like it's just been a mess. I would love to be able to train like real hard to be a dude and feel like that. But yeah, I'm doing the best I can. I did go run about a half mile, took a minute break, and then ran 14:110. So that kind of got the heart rate going, got me feeling good. I had a dream last night that Sean Payton called me and wanted me to play for the Broncos.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was. I woke up and I'm like 41 years old. I don't think I can do that. In my mind, I'd like to think that I can. But after like 2 days of practice, I would need – and maybe it's because the bathroom at the Woody now, the not the locker room, but the bathroom Schlegs. Someone said they changed the urinal cakes or the air fresheners, but it smells like a combination of like Tiger Balm and like Lexol, Biofreeze. Like it just smells like lubricants to get your joints going. So yeah, maybe I've had that in my mind here the last couple of days. I don't know, but I'm excited you're fired up.
Has your mind changed about this game, Bob?
No. It hasn't.
Exactly, because you and I are we're realists. We understand ball and what the length of the season.
There's people that, they're really upset with Denzel Burke. They're Denzel Burke. And I'm like, okay, guys, like he hasn't played great all year. I'm like, really? Because I haven't seen that film. I think he's played pretty well all season long.
I like how people just throw that shit up there, Bob.
Yeah, they throw it on the ground.
He hadn't played great. Like, show me.
Show me that film. I go, he's played well. He's played well all year. Like I'm a big believer of like rotating guys who should be on the field. I'd love to see Jermaine Matthews play a little more. And I think that he's good enough to play. Like I'm gonna leave that to Tim Walton. They'll figure that out. And I think it'll be fine. But I mean, I believe that they were going to win until literally I saw him slide, look down. There was Will Howard, and there was 0 seconds left. Like that's the type of confidence I have in this team and have in this group because of what they've been able to do and what they've been able to show. So I'm not worried about it at all. They've got some injuries. That's the big thing now is they're going to have to figure this out. Josh Simmons is most likely done for the year. Taylor Shabola was out. He's battling some stuff. They've got the bye week. Will he be back? There's a number of other guys. Kazmarek was in a sling. Guys are nicked up. Like, are they going to be able to come back? How long will some of these injuries last? Those are the things. But now is the time to lead. Like, if you're a leader on this team, like, now is the time. Everyone wants to lead, loves to lead when you're 6-0 and undefeated, when you're 8-0 and 9-0 and hoisting trophies. When you fail to meet expectations, that's when leadership truly comes in. That's when those guys have to rally up and say, okay, the standard is the standard. Let's get back to work. You lick your wounds a little bit, you evaluate what happened, and then you orient back to due north to the direction that you were headed, and you go. And that's what it's about. And that's what the leadership is about. And that's the way that they need to be able to get it done. All right. I want to talk to all the parents and athletes out there. I tell you about it all the time. Protects what matters most with XSport mouth guards, trusted by professional athletes, developed and designed by NHL team dentists. XSport mouth guards are scientifically proven to help absorb high impact hits, protecting both your brain and your teeth. XSport mouth guards feature 3 layers of custom protection, included patented carbon fiber, where they 3D print that thing right to your grill so it fits like a glove for better protection, better performance, maximum comfort, and clear communication, so you can focus on your game, not on your gear. Don't take chances with your safety. Visit xsportguards.com/Bobby. Save 15%. Protect what matters most with XSport. Bill Bender, the sporting news, coming up next.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the.
I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage Beer. Beer-flavored beer.
Beef with an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool, and it doesn't taste like... I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink Garage Beer. It's American, and so can you. Garage Beer. Beer-flavored beer.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
All right, welcome back in the Bobby Carpenter Show, and now we're pleased to be joined by our guy, Bill Bender. Super excited to have him in here with us and giving us a little national perspective, maybe a little rationality to the conversation. Bill, the Buckeyes fall in Eugene to Oregon by a 1.32-31, a game that was back and forth, had all the drama that you love to see in a big-time college football game. The Buckeyes fell from 2 to 4. Really only 2 spots down, kind of swap places with Oregon a little bit as them and Penn State move up. What did you see when you were watching that game?
Well, I kind of agree with you. I mean, they had a chance to win the game at the end of the game in a hostile road environment where Oregon played well offensively. Ohio State didn't have its best night defensively. But as you guys know, one of the common threads when Ohio State loses, the other team's quarterback has to play lights out. And Dillon Gabriel did. You have to give him credit for that. I mean, 4 of 4, 178 yards on passes of 20 yards or more. He was able to throw the ball down the field. He had the nice touchdown run. And despite all of that, Ohio State was in field goal range with a chance to win at the end of the game. I think the common perception is these guys will run it back in December. I can believe that. The betting odds reflect that. They're co-Big Ten favorites now.
Bill, I love you, man. I want to know this. When you're watching this game, when did you know it was a game? You know, like, you know, something, because I thought it was going to be 31-17, meaning it's going to be a game, but we're going to have it in control. When did you know it was going to be a game? I'm giving you like a 2-parter, okay? So when did you know it was a game? And when did you start to have a little bit of sense of urgency as to, oh, I think Oregon's playing a little bit better than Ohio State right now?
Second quarter, you knew it was going to be a game. I thought after the first drive, Ohio State, there was a play that could have been ruling an interception. And then you start to wonder what you hate in watching top 5 games between top 5 teams is, are the refs going to get in the way? And then they didn't. And then Ohio State kind of turned it over and gave it right back to Oregon. But second quarter, because you could see Dillon Gabriel was comfortable. Ohio State, they were trading punches, and you just kind of felt at that point it's going to be a 4-quarter game. but I never really felt like they were going to lose. Even when Oregon was driving the ball down, the defense bows up, forces a field goal. There's plenty of time. And I feel like, guys, I don't know if you feel the same way. I feel like both teams left that game feeling like they could have done more. Oregon could have won that game by 10 points without all the botched points, and Ohio State still could have won the game at the end.
There's a lot of opportunities. Did your opinion of either team change of what you thought they were coming into that game?
Oregon's probably a little better than I thought. I did think Ohio State would go there. I was on this show last week saying Ohio State would win by 10 points and take care of business. But Oregon is a interesting matchup from the standpoint you don't know what they're going to do. They do a random onside kick. They throw the ball down the field. Dan Lanning is so aggressive sometimes, it will catch up with him. I compare him to Dan Campbell quite a bit with the way they coach. It's aggressive all the time and deal with the consequences later. That obviously has worked for Dan Campbell in the NFL. It could get Dan Lanning into some trouble, and it did last year, and it almost did this year. I'm not buying I did the 12 men on purpose. I think that's a rule that needs looked at. And on the other end, Ohio State, there's work to do.
I think he did it on purpose. Just letting you know, because like in the league, this is something that people don't know. Like in the league, Bob, you know this. You have a guy that's like a rules expert and literally will sit there and watch film about how you go after certain situations and things within the rules that you can do to negate some of these things. I think it was intentional. I think the onside kick was 100% intentional. But let's talk about this. That game exposed what and how severe is it for Ohio State?
The injuries on the offensive line are worrisome because Ohio State couldn't just line up, and they should have ran the ball more. They maybe got around away from the running game a little bit, but they can't just plow through Oregon. Oregon was pretty good up front, and Jordan Birch didn't play. So I think that's something that it would be a concern for Ohio State on some level. Neither quarterback was sacked. Found that to be an interesting stat. Neither quarterback, the pressure didn't land either way. So for Ohio State, when they go play Penn State on November 2nd, and yes, I'm skipping a few steps, they're going to have to get on Drew Aller and get some sacks. Otherwise, he's just going to throw to that tight end every play.
Warren, who had 17 catches for like 230 yards. I mean, remarkable day for Warren. We'll get to Penn State here because there's a lot of other big games, obviously, across the country that shaped a lot of what we've seen.
Bill, side nugget. Sorry, Bob. Why didn't they throw the ball deep? I want your opinion.
It's a good question. I mean, maybe that's the next step with Will Howard. You have to trust your quarterback to throw the ball down the field. He only had, I think, 3 or 4 attempts of 20 yards or more. You do have Jeremiah Smith. He did play outstanding as usual. I think they called pass interference, and we can debate that all we want. But in general, Jeremiah Smith is unguardable most of the time. So, and up until that last drive and everything that we've talked about with the last drive, Will Howard had a good game.
Yeah, he did.
2 touchdowns, didn't turn the ball over, wasn't sacked, made good decisions with the football. And I think the next step for Ohio State in these games, he's going to have to throw the ball down the field a little bit more.
You mentioned no sacks. I mean, Oregon, I'm trying to remember. I think they maybe blitzed some, weren't overly aggressive. Both teams were supposed to have very dominant defensive lines. Dylan Gabriel looked really comfortable. He even had the one run for the touchdown, obviously 4 carries on the ground, I think, for 32 yards. Were you surprised at all, Bill, that Ohio State did not try to send pressure in attempts to heat him up and make him uncomfortable, as we saw maybe in the first couple of weeks of the season?
Yeah, they let him get comfortable, and he never really got uncomfortable. He had that long run, hitting his tight end Ferguson. Ferguson's a nice player too, on top of everything else that Oregon has, and was able to throw the ball down the field. So if you make Dylan Gabriel comfortable, he's a 6th-year player who can run and has played in Red River and played just about everywhere. So that surprised me a little bit. Yeah. And one of the things, and I'm working on this week, with these top 5 games, we can talk, you guys are going to hate this, but they're shootouts, right? Yeah. Alabama, Georgia, 41-34. This one, 32-31. I think the last top 5 kind of grinded out type game was when Georgia beat Tennessee 27-10 a couple years ago in a top 5 shootout. These games are more about the offense. I know that breaks both of your hearts. That's the way the game is.
I think when you have really good skill players, especially in college, I mean, you see it in the league, like you got to have them, but the fundamentals of being able to tackle in space, those are the hardest things, right? And I was even thought when I asked your question again, I got to go back and look. I won't, but they might not have thrown deep because they always had a high safety over Jeremiah. So like again, I just asking questions. But let's take this now. So you're Ohio State. Over this week, what are you working on?
This week, it's a fundamentals week, right? They work on that. You recover from some of the injuries, and then you start to prep for Nebraska, who has a really huge game against Indiana. That took a second because I don't think I've ever said that sentence in my life, that Indiana, Nebraska, and Bloomington is huge, and it is. So I think for Ohio State, you get back that. You hope your offensive line's healthy. Will Howard continues to work it out with his receivers, and that defense kind of looks at itself in the mirror and says, hey, we've said all summer we're going to be this dominant team. We've been dominant to this point. One thing about Denzel Burke, and he has taken a lot of criticism, it's probably the first elite receiver he's seen all year. You know, when you play these teams that they're playing, and then all of a sudden it's Evan Stewart here, Tez Johnson here, Ferguson in the middle, yeah, you speed up a little bit. I'm sure you guys went through that as well.
Yeah, it takes a minute to kind of fill in there and realize that talent. No matter what you see in practice, Bill, games are always different, and so they see great receivers in practice on a daily basis, and they're very, very aggressive with that. But it's just a much different paradigm when you're out there on the field, and every single catch and every play ultimately matters. All right, we're going to take a quick break here with Bill. Coming back, we've got Penn State, USC. We've got Georgia over Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Florida, Tennessee. My goodness, there are games aplenty to talk about from last week, and then maybe even look ahead a little bit to this weekend. We'll get all that going up here next on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
Well, how do they know I'm doing this? Did somebody leak this out?
It's social media.
Oh.
That's the way social media works now.
I thought maybe you were just running that yap.
Welcome to Big Play, a sports media team that started back in 2014, and now we're not in a garage. Look at us, incorporating some of Cleveland's favorite sports personalities, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland. Coming to you live from the shores of Lake Erie and Burke Lakefront Airport, join Team Big Play for all the best sports talk in Ohio. Check us out on social media at Big Play, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland.
All right, welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show here with my guy, Anthony Schlegel, and my man, Bill Bender. The Sporting News, give him a follow on Twitter, now X, at Bill Bender 92. And make sure you check out all his stuff on the Sporting News. Does such a tremendous job. All right, so there was another big game, a bi-coastal, two-time zone game with Pennsylvania State University taking on the University of Southern Cal. Trojans out there in the LA Coliseum, 33-30. Penn State down late. I mean, was this the game where James Franklin got to silence some of those critics, quiet some of the demons, Bill?
I think so. And I've been one that's criticized the big game reputation, and can they actually go out and do that? And they were down 20-6 at halftime, so it was easy to pile on at that point. But again, Drew Aller was able to play through the mistakes. He threw 3 interceptions, but he also hit Tyler Warren, who is this throwback tight end who catches everything, wearing number 44, making plays. USC did not have an answer for him. And now all of a sudden we're going back to criticizing Lincoln Riley. 3 one-score losses in Big Ten play. They did better against the run, but then they struggle against the pass, and they struggle in the clutch. And he is 5-8 in his last 13 games. So this 2 time zone thing is very real, But the only teams that have lost at home are USC and UCLA. UCLA losing a second one to Minnesota over the weekend.
Yeah, USC, and for everything that Lincoln Riley does, like, it was crazy. But as a program, they haven't been a top 5 team since 2017. That's something that's absolutely crazy. And getting it, not being able to get it done. And that game was in overtime. Like, this weekend lived up to all of the stuff. You had Wisconsin beating absolutely Rutgers, the brakes off them. I didn't really see that. Good for Fick. You had overtime with Purdue and Illinois. But I want to go to this one, Bob. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. What's going on in the Big 12? Like, Iowa State, Utah, they're out. Kansas State beat Colorado. What are you thinking from these games?
It's defense wins in that conference right now.
Yep.
Iowa State able to go to Morgantown and pull out a 28-16 win. Rocco Becht doesn't make a lot of mistakes, and their running game can control games. And then there's BYU, who we get to watch Friday night against Oklahoma State, and they continue to thrive. They're really tough out at home. And I think some of these Big 12 teams are figuring that out. I still think Kansas State's in the mix. That was a super entertaining game with Colorado, and Shedeur Sanders playing without Jimmy Horn and playing without Travis Hunter, almost able to pull it out. But that conference, and Brett Yormark, to his credit, built it as it's going to be parity to this championship chase, and it is. Because right now, any one of those teams I just mentioned, with the exception of Colorado, with the second loss, could win that conference.
Yeah, Colorado, I was surprised to see them. I was hoping that they would ultimately win it, but still, Bill, only one loss in the Big 12 for Colorado. So, despite the fact that they dropped that to Kansas State, still in a pretty good position to be able to make that push with their other loss ultimately coming to Nebraska, and you win the conference. Well, you make the playoff coming out of the Big 12. Looking at some of the games in the SEC that were a little crazy. Bill, what is going on in Alabama? Is there something substantively different? 70 to 80% of those guys on the roster are Saban guys, but yet it doesn't have that same feel of a Saban team that we're used to.
Yeah, I was watching with Grant. I know I mentioned that. That's a good thing that Grant wants to sit and watch football, by the way.
Yeah,
and I looked over at him and I said, how many headsets do you think Nick Saban would have broken by now? Especially at the end of both halves. That first half meltdown was something else. They have a safety. They blow a coverage on fourth down. They throw an interception, and South Carolina scores all these points. Nick Harbor makes this outstanding catch, and it comes down to a 2-point conversion. And I know the temperature with Alabama fans is, they're worried about what Kalen DeBoer is wearing on the sideline. And that is what happens when you replace a legend. There's nothing that's off limits. They're going to look at your clothing. They're going to look at your coaching decisions. They're going to look at the body language of your players. And I'm starting to think there's a lot of pressure on Tennessee this weekend. They haven't looked good the last 2 weeks. There's way more pressure on Alabama to go down to Neyland Stadium the way they're playing, Bobby.
I mean, Bill, for both of those teams this week, and we'll get into Tennessee because I was amazed at Florida. We'd written Billy Napier off. I mean, they came – he might be saving his job. Even though he lost that game and taking them to overtime on the road, playing good ball, Tennessee looks pretty good this year. I mean, I know they've struggled late, but that was a big game for Florida. But Tennessee and Alabama, I mean, whoever loses this game, Bill, essentially gives themselves zero margin for error, and we're halfway through the season. We talked about, the 12-team playoff, you can have some losses. You can, but if that third loss is coming in the 7th or 8th week, that's a big difference, or that second loss, because then you have no room or no margin moving forward. I think that might be the biggest game of the year, at least in the SEC to this point, for two teams with a lot of expectations.
For sure. Tennessee still has to play Georgia. And Alabama still has to go to Tiger Stadium, where Brian Kelly reminded everybody last weekend that it's really hard to win there. And I'm guessing they'll play that one at night just so he can continue this streak of night games. So, again, I think there's way more pressure on Alabama here. The defense hasn't looked great, especially in the second half. They struggle to get off the field on third down. Jalen Milroe's been good. He's been a saving grace for them, but he had a couple head-scratching turnovers last week, and the running game has been hit or miss. You play this Tennessee team, yeah, they've struggled on offense a little bit, but that defense has been solid. Both games. They were solid against Arkansas and for the most part against Florida. So, and we know those Tennessee fans are going to go nuts if they win that game. There'll be a lot of cigars out for sure.
I think this is why everybody absolutely loves college football. I was listening to a show when they were talking about pro football versus college football. They're 18 to 22 years old, right? Again, unless you're Cam Rising, potentially going for his 8th year, stuff like that, or somebody that has the most snaps of all time in Dylan Gabriel. But you look at Washington beating Michigan, and then they get just absolute housed, right? You had USC beat LSU early. Everybody wrote them off. They're playing good ball now, right? You had Tennessee getting beat by Arkansas, barely beat Florida. Now you got this game. Heck, Georgia could potentially have their second loss going down to Austin. In the SEC, outside of Texas, like, who's that number 2? You know what? Bump that, Bill. Who are the elite teams in college football? Because we had somebody talk about somebody going to a better elite team than Ohio State. So who are the elite teams in college football right now?
Well, I do think Texas has shown enough that we have to believe that they are. The way that they treated Oklahoma over the weekend, dominant on both fronts. And I think they held back a little bit because Quinn Ewers was still settling in as coming back from his injury. They were totally dominant. Ohio State and Oregon, they're still going to be in the mix at the Big Ten. And I think Penn State is maybe a little more than just a third wheel, being able to go out and win that game. So the big question becomes Georgia. Are they a top 5 team? We saw Kirby Smart shoved a player. Like, there's no way around it. He shoved the player.
What is going on with that, Bill?
Like, I could dance around it, and I say this all the time. The SEC, one thing they do a better job of than the Big Ten is they publicize losses so much better. They can figure out a way to make you believe that this was a good loss, and they kind of glossed over that. So the pressure with Georgia this week is this: 2 losses this early in the season. The player arrests have been well documented. Now you got Kirby Smart shoving a player and having to apologize for it. And on top of that, they're going to Texas, the newcomer, that could knock them off. And at that point, what you would hear next, whether they're substantiated or not, are NFL rumors with Kirby Smart. I've always thought he could fit with Dallas because you know who he reminds me of? Bobby might shoot this down. Reminds me a little bit of Jimmy Johnson, the way he talks, the way he coaches, the way they go about their business. And who has Jerry Jones won Super Bowls with? Former college coaches.
Look at Bill putting that out there in the ether right now.
Look at that, man. Look at that, Bill.
I mean, that's
bend it like Bender, baby.
Ball. Yeah, I mean, Jerry definitely frustrated when you get a beating like that on your birthday, not necessarily the present you wanted at home. We were talking about Brian Kelly at Tiger Stadium getting a big win. I thought that Ole Miss LSU game was very kind of under the radar for what people probably thought it was going to be. I look at it a lot like Alabama, Tennessee this weekend, Bill, where you have 2 one-loss teams coming in there and only one is going to leave with only 1 loss. What does this do for Ole Miss? Because they've got Georgia, I believe, still on their schedule moving forward. We kind of had almost shooed them in to the CFP this year based upon their schedule and the talent that they had. And now 2 losses through 7 games, like that hill got a lot steeper.
Yeah, if they don't beat Georgia, they won't be in. And again, a reminder that this LSU team suddenly in the top 10. And 2 teams that lost in week 1, LSU, Clemson. Look where they're at now. It's okay to play that, step out and play that week 1 game in the college football playoff era that we're in now. And for Ole Miss, they didn't really schedule tough early in the season. Second loss, a lot of pressure on Lane Kiffin. They have too many penalties. That's the bottom line with them. They are so penalized. They make too many mistakes, and they set them up for that late game loss against the Tigers.
Yeah, Lane, I'll just throw this out there. Lane's hurting himself for that Florida job. Honestly, you go to the college football playoff. Hey, guess what? Boom, be a Gator. Not so fast, my friend.
Yeah, Kirby to the Cowboys and Lane to Florida. I think we've got it figured out between the 3 of us.
Oh my gosh, listen, Bill, that'll give you articles to write for weeks here. If you need something like in the intermittent week and a half after between the new playoff formula of when that's starting and the conference championship games, that can be a little bit of your juice right there of who's taking some of these jobs. Bill, we kept you forever today. There was a ton to talk about. Like, we didn't even really get to Red River all that much because Texas was looking so good. Another solid slate of games this week. The Buckeyes will be off. Hopefully you enjoy another great weekend and can sit down with your son and watch some college football.
I will do. Guys, thanks so much for having me on. It's a great segment. I love it every week.
Appreciate it, Bill. That's Bill Bender of the Sporting News. I'm going to follow on X at Bill Bender92, one of our favorites. And he breaks it down, Schlegs, like nobody's business. And there was a lot of good games, and we got to basically all of them with our boy, Bill. So, all right, coming up next, we've got our headlines. Some of the big stuff that was happening in college football happening in Ohio State. We will break down that with all of you here next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Bobby Carpenter. I want to give a huge thank you and a shout out to Affinity Health, the leaders in the testosterone replacement industry. I've been on a testosterone replacement program for a few years right now, and I've got to tell you, it's been an absolute game changer. Affinity Health has allowed me to be the best version of myself, both mentally and physically. I loved how easy it was to get started. I booked my free consultation, met with my prescriber, checked my numbers, and Affinity Health designed a program that was customized to fit my needs. So I'm telling you guys, if you have low energy, you want to get rid of that spare tire around the waist or take it to the next level in the bedroom, Affinity Health is the place to get started. So don't wait any longer. 5 minutes of your time, book your free consultation. You're going to love the way you feel. Welcome back in the Bobby Carpenter Show. And now we've got our headlines brought to you by our friends over at Affinity Whole Health. Affinity offers personalized treatment plans to help people feel better, whether they are struggling with weight loss, low energy, muscle loss, poor sleep. Affinity, they can help you with all of it, folks. Affinity Whole Health provides expert guidance to help you safely reach your health goals. And they've been doing it with me here for the last 7 years. They've got Ohio covered, Columbus, Cleveland. They're out in Indy as well. They're up in Chicago, the whole Midwest. It's here for you. Go check them out at AffinityWholeHealth.com. Set up your free consultation to get started on your journey, AffinityWholeHealth.com. All right, start with this. Got some headlines, Schlegs. You were talking about Dan Lanning, the 12th guy on the field late in the game. And what are you doing over there, by the way? What is that noise?
Shake weights. Shake weights. No. It's just protein right here, man. I'm just drinking protein. More protein in my diet.
You're such a meatball. Like, you can't take a 50-minute break to not have some protein shake. I mean,
no,
really?
I love it, man. Everybody out there, you guys need protein, man. You got to eat. You got to eat big, sleep big, train big.
We got breaks and times for you to do that. I'm drinking water. You don't see me shaking protein, shaking and shaking.
Could you hear it? Could you hear it?
Shaking in your face. I mean,
I love that. Yeah, all over my face. Let's go.
There. All right. Okay. Dan Lanning, 12th guy on the field. They changed the rule about 10, 12 years ago. 12 players participating, no longer a rule. It used to be a 15-yarder. Now 12 guys on, assuming that nobody's just throwing them on like that. It's a 5-yard penalty. It does not stop the clock. It's not a dead ball foul. Dan, throw this up, Pat. Dan was asked about it, Lanning, in the press conference post-game. This is immediately post-game, so wasn't going to get time to formulate this up. Like, was it intentional? Was it not? Let's hear from Dan.
Much of the commentary world has decided and struck you as a genius, Dan, for the 12-man penalty and declared that it was intentional. Was it indeed intentional to induce the throw one-on-one against Jabbar in that spot?
It wasn't one-on-one. We actually had a safety on top. So there was so it's called dog. It's when you play, but he wasn't in extremely tight coverage, but he was in dog coverage where he had safety on top of him. And there was a timeout before that. We spent an inordinate amount of time on situations. There's some situations that don't show up very often in college football, but this is one that obviously was something that we have worked on. So you can see the result.
Yeah. So it's like there's something that they said they had worked on. You don't probably see that situation very often where a team has a timeout, and it's better to give them 5 yards than it is to give them another 5 or 6 seconds or any more yards on top of that. We'll get a stop. We'll give them 5, but we're not going to give them 15, and they can't get that time back. So to me, like, we'll get to Lane next. Like, there's rules that are put in place. And they changed the rules so it's easier for the officials if guys are running on and off and you don't have to sit there and delineate. But the reality is, like, there's certain things that happen that when they change like this, man, you got to go back and rewrite rules to make sure that, okay, in the final 2 minutes, you can't do this stuff anymore. People will say it's smart. Yeah, it is smart, but there's a certain level of integrity. This isn't like, to me, grabbing a guy when you're getting beat or doing something like that. This is more akin to the injury situation and taking advantage of a system that was put in place to make it easier on people, make it easier on the officials. Instead, you're circumventing that knowingly. And
well, Bob, I had a great coach who once said, win if you can, cheat if you must, but always win. And here's the thing. They expose the rule and they use it to their benefit. That's not on them. That's on the rules. I think, to your point, Bob, it should go like in 2 minutes. Like that's also why you see constantly offenses like reset the clock. Like, we brought in guys, we're trying to go up tempo, or we made an adjustment. Oh, yeah. Defense has to make an adjustment, but you have to get on in a timely manner so that you can run your play, run your motion, et cetera, and then there's a delay, a game penalty, and they got to take a timeout, right? Like, you see that all the time. So in that entire situation, there were a couple things that happened, right? The OPI on Jeremiah, boom, clock was running. I think there was 22 seconds at that time. Do we automatically take a timeout there? That's where everybody went into the scenario with Coach Day. And, like, should he have taken a timeout there? I think about 5 seconds came off the clock before they snapped it at 17. I don't necessarily remember, like, for detail. But that's a potential. Then I got 22 seconds. I can run 2 plays, or I can have 3 plays. I know where I got to do with the ball, et cetera, right? Then you have this one where it's like, we're not going to allow that completion. Boom, penalty, 5 yards, move it up. We just chewed up 5 seconds, 6 seconds off the clock. Now they only got 6 seconds remaining to run a final play, trying to get in field goal position to do it. Then you go back and you can look at, what could Ohio State have done in that? Well, you still have a timeout. Was there an outlet that you could have just dumped it all over the middle for 5 yards, take a knee, boom, call the timeout because I don't have to continue to run? Because if you're a defender, what are we taught, Bob? In that situation, they catch it in bounds. Let's stay in bounds. Let them get some yardage and make a tackle, because now the game is over, right? So we work on all these things all the time. Kudos to him for having the wherewithal and having worked on it with his team in this scenario. This is what we're going to do. That's more – it's not necessarily the guys doing it in practice, but it's the coaches talking about situations all the time. And it's one thing I appreciate in the league, where you sit down and you just like go over that stuff all the time. It makes you have a higher football acumen.
It does. And, I mean, I wish they would run some sort of mesh route, rub route with an in-breaker, catch it, slide, boom. Also give a check down option so the guy could catch it, turn around, dive, timeout. You could probably get that done in 6 seconds. It stinks that ultimately happened and the way that it went down. All right, now we're going to go to Ole Miss, because this goes right to our commercial, Schlegs, with the rules and how things are ultimately circumvented and move around. In this statement from Ole Miss, where they've been taking a lot of heat, because you go look at the number of guys that have gone down from them in these hurry-up situations. Statement from Ole Miss on October 11th. Feigned injuries are a notable topic in college football. We realize our program has been part of the discussion, or the focal point of the discussion. We have been in communication with the National Coordinator for Football Officiating and provided relevant medical information for his review to answer all the questions about recent injuries. Yeah, we got a lot of dudes that cramp, is basically what they're trying to say. We also updated the SEC office with our head coach to communicate with our coaches and players to ensure we conduct ourselves properly and are compliant in this matter. The reality is they're going to have to put something in now, because you say, Schlegs, like, this is part of it. When you're taking advantage of something that's put in for player safety and for ease of game operation. And so, listen, you get a free one. I don't know if you should say, if a guy has to come out, he's out now for a whole series. If a guy comes out, second guy of the quarter, you can either take 5 yards or burn a timeout. Like, that's the crap that I don't think we necessarily need.
No, okay. So the other one was called strategy, right? And this one is actually negating a little bit about, it's inhibiting the offense from doing what it wants to do. I guess
putting a 12th guy out there, Schlegs, and having them
I know.
Like you're getting them off the field. Like, that's the thing.
I'm going back. I'm trying to rationalize it. And I can't. It is the same thing. I think the consequence to it has to be this, Bob. It's in both of them, right? Like, it's very, very simple. you have a 12th guy under 2 minutes because you're not going on and off, you automatically burn a timeout, or it's an automatic 15-yard penalty.
Yeah.
I think the same thing can be held true on this. If it's in the middle of the game, yeah, you get a free one. Because again, we heard Ryan Day, Chip Kelly talking about utilizing tempo as a weapon. I can go up tempo, I can huddle, right? And we've seen that this year about how they want to do that. Oregon did in this game for us because we couldn't substitute guys. They got some tempo, right? And we're not necessarily used to that. So you're spot on. They're both wrong. I am wrong. But I will say this. It's okay. Well, again, we're on a talk show. We're rationalizing this as we're talking about it live. And I just think if people are going to do that, then you have to have the rules in place where they, have some type of penalty, whether it's you're going to burn a timeout, and if you don't want to take that timeout, it's going to be a 15-yard penalty.
Gotcha. Buckeyes, real tailgate talk.
There you go. If we had a whiteboard, we'd do it faster.
We got to go, Schlegs. We got tailgate talk brought to you by Real Truck coming up next. All right, Schlegs, going to our tailgate talk brought to you by our friends at Real Truck, the #1 truck accessory brand in the United States, selling upgrades for the ultimate tailgate party. They're going to make your truck as sweet as ours. They'll do great stuff to it, interior, exterior. It's all there for you. Gear up for the season and bring your truck to life like we did at realtruck.com. All right, Schlegs. My goodness, there's a lot of different questions here. We'll go to one. Pat down from our guy Pac-Man, about halfway down the stream from yesterday. Does Ohio State need to change their nutrition and fitness program, Schlegs? Both O&D line looks slow and weak. Should Ohio State travel on Thursday for West Coast games? Do you think players drink alcohol during the season?
Don't know. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to answer the last one first. When Schlegs and I played, you were a little better. I mean, I used to drink a lot during the season. A lot of people did. Over the last 20 years, these guys are much more conscious about like going out and doing things. So that's not even really in a selection set for them. They take far greater care of their bodies than anybody I knew, Schlegs, when we played like in season consistently. These guys are in remarkable shape and train incredibly hard. West Coast a day early, I don't think that had an impact on it. At least not from what I saw and from talking to people. Everyone felt good at the start of the game, and it wasn't an impact. As far as training and diet, Schlegs, that's you go there.
I'm just going to say this. It's just what happens when you have good versus good. Like, what are you talking about, right? So, could they look faster? 100%. How do you do that? Blitz people. Like, don't rush 3, right? 3 on 5. Probably not going to look that fast. You know what I'm saying? So, I totally disagree with that statement. I think they're plenty fast. I think they're in shape. I think their diets are on point. So,
yeah, these guys work incredibly hard. They do a great job. All right, a couple more down from that from RMG1. Schlegs, and this is kind of it's going to be a little bit of a push-pull. I've seen a lot of guys throw out here and talk about this. Why doesn't Knowles bring more pressure in the big games?
Bob, it's a great question. And I think part of that was from the first year, the big play threat. But at some point, you got to trust your dudes to go make plays. And again, in college football, in professional football, it's all about affecting the quarterback. The guy that has the ball in his hands, you got to affect him. However you got to do that is what you got to do.
And you got to trust the corners. Sometimes they need a little help. Sometimes you may have to sit a guy down for a play or two, maybe for a series. And you've got good options. A lot of good young players there. Like, you can rotate guys through. I think that will ultimately help as well. But like you said, Schlegs, if you're not getting with 4 straight rush, run some stunts, run some twists, get some guys going. And then ultimately, if you have to bring second and third level players, you have the guys to be able to do that. But you have to impact the quarterback. Anybody that's comfortable in college, you're going to see them now put up 350 yards. Like, that's just what it is. These guys are too good. All right. Going to close up the show. Schlegel, we got your parting thoughts coming up next on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
Well, how do they know I'm doing this? Did somebody leak this out?
It's social media.
Oh.
That's the way social media works now.
I thought maybe you were just running that yap.
Welcome to
All right, so it's going to be a robust week. I know a lot of people want to comment, so please like, subscribe, leave your comments on this, whether it's in the YouTube forum, on Twitter, on X, or wherever it is. We'll get them. We'll get them to them. We got a lot of stuff we've got to answer. We got a couple more days of it, so fire those questions away. Your final thoughts, Schlegel.
Final thoughts are this. When affecting the quarterback, one thing that I think we could do better, and that is impacting the routes through reroutes. I think we could be more physical at the line of scrimmage, especially on those ones in the seams in the zone. Now, again, sometimes that means a backer has to walk out because of the way people are spreading you because the hatches are so wide in college. Well, guess what? If there's still one back, it's one gap. We're going to have to be able to get some D linemen in those ones. If I'm responsible for the A gap and I'm all the way walked out, I can't get there. So you got to do some slants or stuff to make it easier for a linebacker to fit. But again, being more physical, rerouting things throws off the timing that also impacts a quarterback, Bob.
Absolutely. Well, Schlegel, another very exciting show. Hopefully tomorrow we got our guy AJ Hawk hopping in. He'll talk a little bit about this, everything we got going on. We'll keep giving you the info, give you the knowledge, everything we know, and try to get all this figured out during this Buckeye bye week. See you tomorrow at 12:30.